Atlanta News First Plus.
Hello,
starts
friends.
now with First Alert Weather.
Oh boy, I can hear myself. Did you guys have a good weekend? Maria, how can I hear that feedback? Here comes our tech girly to save the day, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, she's just turning the volume down. That's all you had to do. Wow. Wow. Hey, y'all, it is smoky outside. Have you noticed that? It was kind of hazy all weekend. It's not too bad out there right now, but believe it or not, this is from wildfires all the way up in Canada. And it's going to continue to be pretty hazy in the coming days. Oh, there's some cute little... You see those hornets flying around? So here is the current smoke. You can see it's really pretty bad up in Minnesota, up into Canada. Those wildfires are thousands of miles to our north, but this is the way the weather works. It's all interconnected. The jet stream, so winds at about 30,000 feet in the atmosphere, carrying that smoke all the way down to the south, and then we're under high pressure. So high pressure, under high pressure, air sinks. So then that air is sinking, and it's bringing that smoke down into low levels of the atmosphere. Pretty incredible, right? It's the reason that we're seeing the smoke today. You can see the air quality alert is out for the entire state of Minnesota, as well as a good portion of South Carolina, including Greenville. I think Spartanburg is included in this. We are not under an air quality alert today. Our air quality is not too bad, but watch what's going to happen, okay? So I want you to look at the top left of your screen. You can see the time frame there. This is right now. The smoke isn't too bad, but once you start seeing those greens and especially those yellows, that's really smoky conditions. You can see those conditions are off in South Carolina. It's the reason for the air quality alert there. That smoke is going to build by this evening. It'll be pretty hazy. By tomorrow, that smoke really builds in. Okay, so it's going to be pretty hazy tomorrow. I think we will probably see an air quality alert of some kind tomorrow because of the smoke. So today, our air quality, the particles in the atmosphere at moderate levels, which is fine. That's very normal for this time of year. We get air qualities in the moderate range pretty often, frequently throughout the summer. But tomorrow, I expect there to be a code orange, which is unhealthy for sensitive groups. That's also not uncommon. For Metro Atlanta in the summer, we get code oranges about 10 times a summer. When we get under these high pressures, you see subsidence or basically an inversion, and then the kind of smoke can get trapped near the surface. That's what we're going to see tomorrow. So that just means that people that suffer from heart and lung disease, the super old, and the very young should probably limit their time outside tomorrow. I do think that we will see some of this get washed out on Wednesday, possibly with some rain. So you can see tomorrow, we're not going to see any rain whatsoever. But then on Wednesday, we start to see some showers, a low-end chance for rain, maybe 20, 30%, mainly south of the city, which will help with the haze there. But across North Georgia, it looks like it's going to stay really completely dry through most of the week this week. So that haze could build back in. It just depends on how quickly they get those wildfires under control up there in Canada, and what the jet stream ends up doing. But it could end up being a pretty hazy week, all in all, this week. I will say our rain chances look very low until this upcoming weekend. We may end up issuing a first alert weather day for Sunday. It does look stormy, so just factor that into your weekend plans. I do expect those storms to continue to return by this weekend, right? Y'all, it is officially hurricane season. It started yesterday, and we're predicting an above-average season again. I want to show you our weather team worked on a pretty incredible and very informative hurricane special for you guys, just about what to expect this season and looking back at last season as well. We're going to play that for you now, so enjoy.
Now, from Atlanta News First, this is Hurricane Season Ready, a First Alert Weather Special.
A Category 4 hurricane with 140-mile-an-hour winds making landfall as we speak.
Flash flooding, trees down, power outages literally all over the state.
I really need to emphasize that this is significant. This is catastrophic, life-threatening flooding.
The family, as you're seeing live on television right now, has been rescued.
We slept in the basement last night because we assumed it could be a fall risk, and then we heard the crash.
But boy, did we see a tremendous amount of rainfall. In fact, record-breaking rainfall from this system.
It's no fault of of any ones other than Mother Nature.
Hurricane Helene brought devastating impacts to Metro Atlanta September of last year, and months and months and months later, the cleanup's still happening across parts of Atlanta. This right here is Peachtree Creek. As you can see right now, that water level is very low, but Helene brought almost a foot of rain. As a result, that water came up above my head and damaged dozens and dozens of homes and prompted nearly 24 water rescues. Hurricane Helene made landfall over the Big Bend of Florida as a Category 4 hurricane, causing nearly 248 deaths in the United States.
Entire houses are missing.
Although there was extensive damage along the coast, some of Helene's greatest impacts were hundreds of miles inland. Here in North Georgia, Helene caused catastrophic flooding as nearly a foot of rain fell over Atlanta. The National Weather Service issued its first ever flash flood emergency as Peachtree Creek swelled well above its banks, flooding homes and endangering lives.
There's some who did have to swim out of the house.
This is one of the biggest storms we've ever had.
This is where my kids were.
Nearly 24 water rescues were performed as floodwaters continued to rise in the early morning hours of September 27, 2024. The water levels were so high that this clubhouse behind me was destroyed. As you can see, the windows are still boarded up, and even the house across the street from Peachtree Creek is vacant and repairs haven't even begun. This home suffered extensive water damage and needs to be gutted or rebuilt. Surrounding homes in West Buckhead are also still reeling from Helene's impacts. Peachtree Creek, much calmer now, hardly a current. But these residents know another tropical system like Helene could cause this serene creek to roar, endangering homes and residents all over again. I'm Atlanta News First Alert Chief Meteorologist Jennifer Valdez. It's not unusual for tropical systems to bring impacts to North Georgia. Hurricane Helene, the most recent example. But over the years, Georgia has seen multiple hits during the hurricane season. First Alert meteorologist J.D. Disharoon has a closer look at some of Georgia's most impactful storms.
When it comes to hurricane season, you may not give it too much thought considering Atlanta is roughly 250 miles from either the Gulf or the Atlantic Ocean. But North Georgia has had its fair share of impacts from tropical systems over the years. The most recent is Helene, which roared through eastern Georgia just last year after making landfall on Florida's Big Bend coast as a Category 4 hurricane, the strongest storm to make landfall along the Big Bend since the year 1900. Now, its torrential rains caused flooding in over 200 structures in metro Atlanta and dozens of water rescues. This from a storm where the center was more than 80 miles away and we were on the quote-unquote weaker side of the storm. It just goes to show you that no matter what side of the storm you're on, you need to prepare. Another storm you may remember vividly is Irma back in 2017. Now, Irma made landfall in the Florida Keys, first as a Category 4 hurricane and then up into Marco Island as a Category 3. The storm then roared quickly up into North Georgia, reaching us as a tropical storm. And this would be the first time Atlanta was ever put under a tropical storm warning. Irma unleashed a constant barrage of tropical storm winds with official gusts exceeding 60 miles an hour at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. These winds knocked over thousands of trees and unfortunately took the lives of 2 people. It's not just recent storms that impacted us. In 2004, Ivan pushed through Alabama, but the sheer size of the storm meant that torrential rains and gusty winds were widespread across our area. Cherokee County was particularly hard hit by over 7 inches of rain, causing widespread flooding, and that heavy rainfall brought extreme river flooding to the region. In fact, causing the Chattahoochee River to hit levels not seen in almost 100 years. Now, elsewhere across North Georgia, 6 tornadoes touched down across the state. And back in October of 1995, Hurricane Opal tore through North Georgia. Its damage across the area, catastrophic. Thousands were without power for up to a week. An 80-foot gash was taken out of 285 on the heavily traveled north end, and like Ivan, the center of Opal never even entered the state of Georgia, but the sheer size of the storm meant the effects were strong and wide-reaching. So this hurricane season, be prepared. We may not see the same damage and effects as those along the immediate coast, but North Georgia has seen its fair share of damage and destruction from monstrous storms. So always better to be on the safe side of things before the storm even arrives.
Some of the data we use to forecast severe weather and tropical systems comes from right here in our backyard. First Alert meteorologist Courtney Jacobazi went to our local National Weather Service office to learn more about where some of the data comes from by taking part in a weather balloon launch.
Forecasting here in North Georgia is a team effort, and some of the key team players are the meteorologists here at the National Weather Service in Peachtree City. They use their special tools and skills to give us crucial forecast information. Before the sun rises, meteorologists like Brett Albright at the National Weather Service are up and at it, getting their forecast ready for the day. A process that not only requires analyzing data on a screen.
The next step, do you actually mind handing me one of the balloons from back there?
Sure.
Just in the black bag, so just yeah.
But one that takes on new heights by way of balloon.
Slide it out like that.
A process that dates back to the late 1800s. Twice a day, meteorologists are tasked with launching a weather balloon to collect data. It starts with a dose of hydrogen.
Then right here, this will just start the flow of hydrogen to the balloon.
A series of meticulous knots to secure everything in place, and most importantly, securing the radiosonde. And if you're not so sure what that is,
in more simple terms, it's just the instrument that we use to measure the weather data, right?
After everything is settled, we're ready for launch. Now, while this instrument looks like a giant balloon from a party store,
Quite the party balloon.
right, no kidding. It is far more than meets the eye, one that truly goes the distance.
Weather is multidimensional, which is why it's important not only to collect data at the surface, but thousands of feet up.
And we're talking thousands.
It'll measure temperature, humidity, pressure, winds, up to about 100,000 feet in the atmosphere.
While this kind of forecast data is important every day, Albright says it's particularly important ahead of severe weather.
Sometimes we'll even do special soundings with the balloon to get an idea of right ahead of a line of thunderstorm. What does it look like? How much energy is that going to have when it comes through, say, Atlanta?
And even provides information for our models to use to more accurately forecast storms.
You get what's called a set of initial conditions, which is what a model starts off of. So it's one of those key factors that goes into being able to start a computer model. You got to know, what does the environment look like to get anything resembling an accurate forecast for the future.
Not only helping us time out our run-of-the-mill thunderstorms,
Heading towards the Watkinsville area at 2:06.
but allowing us to more accurately track tropical systems when they threaten the southeast. Needless to say, this is an invaluable tool.
That whole column from the surface to 100,000 has some sort of application somewhere in the atmospheric science field.
A tool that really shines when the sun isn't shining. In Peachtree City, I'm First Alert meteorologist Courtney Jacobazi for Atlanta News First.
An above-average hurricane season is forecast this year. Don't go anywhere. A closer look at the numbers and how many storms we're expecting is coming up. Hurricanes can bring the potential of flooding and severe weather to North Georgia, including the threat of multiple tornadoes. First Alert meteorologist Rodney Harris teamed up with the National Weather Service for a closer look at how they survey and classify tornadoes after a storm.
Guys, you gotta be in your safe place. You see how this is blinking purple? This is now a confirmed tornado.
11 tornadoes have touched down in North Georgia so far this year. After a tornado touches down, you'll usually hear a report like this. There's some rotation popping up. We go up even higher, Ella, there's some more rotation.
I was surprised it was an EF1. I really would have thought it might have been more.
Tornadoes are ranked on a scale based on how much damage they cause, with an EF0 being the weakest and an EF5 being the strongest. Now, unlike hurricanes, which are rated in advance using weather data, tornadoes are actually rated after they touch down.
We've been to some surveys where you look and it looked like a weed whacker knocked them all down. It's very intermittent, and so that tells me that combined with the no damage to the house per se, no damage to these houses per se, that the wind speed's probably on the order of 70, 75.
Keith Stillman is the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service in Peachtree City. Now, he hopped in the First Alert tracker to show me how damage surveys are done. The surveys, which determine if a tornado occurred and how strong it was, are a simple two-part process. For step one, Stillman will use radar technology to pinpoint where the worst damage may have been.
Got the roads plotted here, and where we're at is at this intersection. The tornado would have, based on radar, would have passed just to our right. This is exactly where the tornado crossed, and then you look at where we are on radar, or where radar says it should have been, right? And so we're fairly close to where that circulation is.
After Stillman has determined where the strongest damage occurred, he'll then move on to step two, which is figuring out the start and end points for that particular tornado.
So what we'll do is we'll use this and just track the circulation as far as we can.
Okay.
I'll mark points as we go.
But we're not done yet. One of the top questions we receive after a storm event is whether damage occurred from a tornado or thunderstorm winds.
Because if it's a tornado, the trees are going to converge on the center point of that tornado. It's just the way and there's inflow wind flowing into the tornado. So trees are going to blow down on an inward trajectory. What typically happens in straight line wind is wind comes down, hits the ground, and it spreads out.
Well, on our damage survey, I discovered something else. Tornadoes don't always follow traffic laws. So how do they get to hard-to-reach locations?
We have an agreement with Georgia Emergency Management Agency that if we need some help, all we have to do is say, hey, GMA, will you send your drone out here? Well, just like here, I'm telling you where we're going to drive to, we'll tell them where to fly the drone.
Anticipating that, we brought our own drone to get a better look. Now, Stillman says that viewers like you also help by submitting storm reports, which can help pinpoint additional places to go. In fact, while we were on our ride along with Stillman, a Spalding County resident did just that.
The National Hurricane Center is expanding its efforts to give people who live inland more lead time to prepare for impacts from tropical systems. First Alert meteorologist Patrick Peak dives into those brand new upgrades.
And it's official, we are in the 2025 hurricane season, and we are taking a look at some of the updates and some of the upgrades that the National Hurricane Center have made over the course of the last year and stuff that they're actually building on. But in order to dive into that, we first need to make sure that we all are on the same page with the original cone of uncertainty. I've seen some of the comments on social media, and some of the takeaway that I'm seeing is that folks believe that the center line is the best track that the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. But in actuality, the cone represents any spot that the center of circulation can travel. And something that we know from hurricanes, unlike tornadoes, they're not just located in one spot. Those impacts go for miles beyond that center of circulation. So in general, that center could travel on the easternmost wall of the cone, it could travel along the westernmost wall of the cone, or it could go anywhere in between. Now, the National Hurricane Center last year came out with an experimental product that took the watches and warnings for tropical systems systems beyond the coastline. Think back just a couple years ago, you would see a hurricane watch, hurricane warning, or a tropical storm watch or warning, but it was just issued for the coastline. Last year, the experimental product took those watches and warning inland, and this is from Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. This is Hurricane Helen, and you can see that there are hurricane warnings and tropical storm watches that extends well into the state of Georgia and beyond. And that's been one of the improvements that they have made, but they took it a step further because sometimes with these systems, you can have an area that could experience tropical storm conditions or hurricane conditions, and they actually have used a blue and pink hashtag to denote those areas. And essentially, that means that you could experience tropical storm winds for a while that could increase to hurricane winds over the course of the period. So something that's important to note, if you find yourself in one of those hatch zones, just know that those winds are going to be estimated to be roughly 39 to 73 miles per hour sustained, but eventually those winds could get above 74, which in essence would be hurricane force winds.
An above-average hurricane season is expected in 2025. First Alert meteorologist Ella Dorsey has a closer look at the numbers and how many tropical systems we are expecting.
NOAA has officially released their outlook for the 2025 hurricane season, and they are predicting a 60% chance of an above-average season. Here's the numbers. 60% chance, so 6 out of 10 chance that we see above-average activity. There is a 1 in 3, 30% chance that we could see a near normal season, but they're only predicting a low 10% chance that we see a below average season. So once again, we're expecting a lot of activity in the Atlantic Basin this year. What does that mean in terms of the numbers? Here's what it means. For 2025, NOAA is predicting 13 to 19 named storms. Out of those named storms, they are predicting 6 to 10 hurricanes. And out of those hurricanes, they are predicting 3 to 5 of them to become major Category 3 or stronger hurricanes. How does that compare to the average? Well, it's still within the average, but it's on the high-end range. Normally, we see 14 named storms per season, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. And how does that compare to last year? Well, last year was considered a hyperactive season. Last year, we had 18 named storms. We had 11 hurricanes. We had a ton of hurricanes, and we had 5 major hurricanes. So they still are predicting this season to be above average, but not quite as hyperactive as last season. I want to remind you guys, we saw 2 significant hurricanes last season. We had Hurricane Helen. We all remember that hurricane, major impact here at home, and also Hurricane Milton. But in the last 7 years, y'all, we've had significant activity in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Gulf of America. In the last 7 years, 10 major hurricanes have made landfall along the Gulf Coast. So really, it only takes 1 hurricane each season, and with an above-average season predicted, we're likely to see some type of major activity again this year in the Gulf.
Thank you so much for joining us for our look at hurricane season 2025. Our First Alert weather team is always looking out for you, so do yourself a favor and download the free Atlanta News First Alert weather app. We update that app multiple times a day to keep you informed if severe weather is heading your way. I'm First Alert meteorologist Jennifer Valdez. Have a great day. Up to date on your latest weather from the largest team of meteorologists in the Southeast. Download the First Alert weather app for hour-by-hour forecasts and join us every weekday at 11:30 a.m. on ANF+. You can also text weather to the number on your screen, and we'll send a link directly to your cell phone.